First and foremost, I want to thank the chairman for this great opportunity. This is, I'm told that when you're as low in seniority as I am, I'm told I'm about 101st in seniority in the United States Senate, that you don't always get the committees that you want. This is something I've been dreaming about being a part of since I first thought of running for the United States Senate. It's an honor to have you as chairman, and frankly, as I look at the issues facing the United States of America as a whole, I know that the future of our country's strength and power will not be determined by our military, but will ultimately be determined by the power of our economy. And the privilege to serve on this committee that to me touches that very core problem we have with jobs, economic growth, is truly a privilege, and I thank you for this opportunity.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you, and of course, to Ranking Member Thune, I want to thank you as well for this opportunity to serve. This is an issue, and of course, Honorable Pritzker, I feel like we are both sitting in our first conversation, so thank you, and you've been somebody who's been a friend and someone I've respected for a long time. You know, in Newark, when I was mayor, we focused on this idea of job creation in every single way. It was the biggest issue that my residents would talk to me about on a daily basis, looking for jobs and opportunity. And we did a lot of analysis on our economy. And one of the things we discovered was the incredible importance of our manufacturing base within Newark. Now, in Newark alone, we have about 400 manufacturers. In New Jersey as a whole, we're an amazing manufacturing state. Over 9,100 manufacturers. They provide over 250,000 jobs within our state. That's direct jobs, not the ancillary jobs in transportation logistics. It adds about $38 billion to our gross state product. And one of the things I did as mayor was bring in the Brookings Institution to begin to help us to analyze this sector in a very pragmatic way. We wanted to grow, and find ways to create more and more jobs. And we found a lot of practical things that rolled out about it that I felt actually a little bit impotent to deal with as a mayor, which are really national issues. And I'm really grateful to have this chance to bring what we see as some of the biggest drivers to manufacturing growth to have a discussion with you. One of the first thing that becomes obvious is while American consumption is pretty significant, 95% of all consumers globally are outside of America. And one of the first things that we saw with our manufacturers is that we were not doing enough to deal with helping to expand American exports. Now, there's obviously a lot going on, but when you talk to manufacturers in states like New Jersey, obviously they're going to have issues with export financing, navigating the complex web of rules of the foreign markets, and then finding specific partners overseas, which there is a demand out there, but a lot of those are difficult to deal with. Now, obviously, the foreign commercial service is critically important, but the one area I want to hone into and ask you a question on is the Commerce's U.S. Export Assistance Centers, or USIACs as they're called. What I see is that there's a broad difference in quality in the USIACs. And as a manager back as a mayor, I realized that when we can develop a real dashboard on specific metrics within my city departments, whether it's CompStat and the police department or elsewhere, once people know they're being measured and what they're being measured on, if you're a manager, you measure the things you care about because people care about how they're being measured. I'm wondering if you would be willing to work with senators like me to help develop a dashboard which creates much greater transparency for the expenditure of taxpayer dollars, but I think would really start to drive the standards overall in terms of the different USIACs that are out there and help us to really be more productive in that connective tissue for manufacturers.
Senator, I would be delighted to work with you on that. Making sure that our USIACs are all performing at the highest level is a top priority for me and for the department, and something that I want to make sure that we get right. And helping our companies export is a huge priority for me. Tomorrow I'll roll out our strategy for the department, and you will find that it's very consistent with the goals that you're talking about, because I think this is an enormous opportunity for just the reasons you talked about for our companies at this time and for our country. Frankly, foreign direct investment is another great opportunity because of all the good things that are happening here. So I'd be delighted to work with you.
That's fantastic. With my time running out, hopefully I'll get another chance to ask another question.
Thank you.
Senator Pryor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, welcome to the committee. It's great to see you again. Thank you.
Good to see you, Senator.
What you're doing.
Thank you. Senator Thune.
Mr. Chairman, I'll pass. We have
Oh, Senator Blunt has reappeared. You're going to assume that? Okay. Bipartisanship. Senator Booker.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your point, Madam Secretary, that this is not philosophy. It's really about where can we invest and get the biggest return. It's all about the ROI, and frankly, our competitor nations are making these investments and pushing past us in areas they should not push past us. But obviously, as I talk to manufacturers on the ground in New Jersey, one of the biggest concerns, again, it's this idea of concentrated costs, diffuse benefits, so people won't necessarily make those costs. But one of the costs that we're not doing a good job in America, because when I talk to manufacturers, they're worried about a skills mismatch. There's actually job openings. There's a lot of job openings. And there's a lot of people looking for jobs in America. And so what I see in New Jersey from talking to manufacturers is there's this mismatch. There's high-paying middle-class jobs available, but we're not preparing them. Now, looking around the country, there's some great examples of people stepping up to do these. These are islands of excellence, when what we really need is a hemisphere of progress. And so you see places like Chicago, the Austin Polytechnic Academy, which is doing a great job at the lowest levels. You've already mentioned that. We're talking K through 12 education, preparing people for these very high-paying education jobs, and internships towards those jobs, which you don't need to go to higher education to get a well-paying middle-class jobs like manufacturing of old. You can raise a family on these jobs. And in Buffalo, I'm seeing that as well. But it's too small. We need to get bigger. And so I really would love to hear from you about what the federal government can do, understanding this concept of ROI that the private sector gets, but we don't seem to get necessarily in Washington. What can we be doing to correct for that mismatch and prepare our workforce for 21st century manufacturing jobs?
Well, Senator, I really appreciate the fact you mentioned Chicago, which is my hometown, and actually the Skills Mismatch program in Chicago is one that I started.
I was told it was paid to be a little obsequious in these hearings.
Well, you know, I work, Mayor Emanuel came together with the private sector to fund an effort to take the longer-term unemployed and help them get the skills to meet. In Chicago, I know the statistics there are 240,000 unemployed and 200,000 open jobs. At least that was the case when I left. I hope it's better than that today. And how do we address that problem, right? That's the problem you're talking about. And it began with really going to companies and dealing with the perception issue of, it's more than a perception issue. One is, will you hire someone who has been unemployed for over 6 months? Recruiters are not rewarded for doing that. It began there and then started with, okay, who could actually fill a job today and who needs training? And then arranging the training once you have the employer who's willing to actually hire the unemployed. So there's a number of things that could be done. What could the federal government do now? It's really a question of, I think, looking at workforce funding and on-the-job training dollars and making it more flexible. What we found, it was very difficult to access the WIA money to actually support those efforts that have high effectiveness. And so that would be an area that I would say that's worth exploring. I think the other is to celebrate the structures that are working. Is to do what you're saying. Here are places, centers of excellence. How do we get to something that is we've got, you said it was very articulate, I can't remember exactly, but how do we really explode those, excellent offerings and make sure that they're occurring in every city so that we can address this problem? Because what I heard on my listening tour was there were two, one of the number one things that every single CEO said to me, and I met with hundreds of CEOs during the first 100 days of my being in my position, was I have a skilled labor challenge. It is across the country. It didn't matter if I was in Albany, Portland, Nashville, or Orlando, and everywhere in between. Everybody talks about this problem. And what's exciting to me is you're starting to see that industry's really stepping in to also fill this void. They're recognizing that they need to play a greater role, which is what we were hoping for.
Right, but if I can push on you just a little bit and beg for a little bit more, a moment more from the chairman, is that that's great for large industries, but most manufacturers are very small. And it's very hard for them to make investments in filling that gap. And so therefore, there is some programs which you seem to allude to, and that are government investments that have a tremendous payoff, whether it's WIA dollars, which are flexible, as I've learned as a mayor, so therefore, we must have a role of the federal government. If everybody's hearing, if you've heard it as Secretary, a chorus of people saying, there's a skills gap, and I heard it with small manufacturers in places like Newark, there must be a role here for the federal government.
I think, flexibility and on-the-job training dollars is one. Another is working with the community colleges, but that's a local effort that needs to go on, which is to really get industry members in a local area to come together and agree on criteria for training, put curricula together, and have recognized credentials that can be used across, so that one manufacturer doesn't have to support it all themselves, but they can work together. And those solutions, we can be a catalyst, I think, at the federal level, and it's something that the Department of Commerce, I'm committed to make as part of our agenda, is really to be a catalyst for those kind of local solutions coming together, because I think ultimately on the ground it has to occur locally.
Right, so in other areas, we see in the federal government incentive pools of federal
Exactly.
dollars that motivate people to come together and create those coalitions.
Right.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blumenthal, I don't want to pass over you, but I don't dare pass over Senator Markey.
I will certainly yield to Senator Markey.
Will you?
Absolutely. Go ahead. I've already asked.
Reserving your time.
Beautiful.
Senator Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, very much. The whole key here is we have to find a way of ensuring that we link up the investors with the inventors, the professors with the producers, and create kind of an environment where, innovation is at the heart of what is happening. And that's what we were able to do in the 1990s in telecommunications. And the chairman and I in the House and the Senate, we passed 3 bills that ultimately led to $1 trillion worth of private sector investment that created Google, eBay, Amazon, Hulu, YouTube in the first generation, and now Twitter and Facebook in the second generation. Just unleashed it because we created the right policies and passed those 3 laws, which unleashed it, created the broadband revolution and the spectrum-based revolution. And energy gives us kind of a similar kind of opportunity, because we know that by the end of the 21st century, there's going to be a huge revolution in the kinds of energy that we use. And we know that it's the same types.
Thank you, Senator Blunt. Senator Booker.
Thank you very much. And gentlemen, I just want to echo incredible testimony, and really an honor to be before you all, not only from the research that's been done, but the true contribution you all have made in helping to grow the American economy. So thank you. Real quick, a few things. I was really impressed that all heads shook up and down when we were talking about that one of the key things government should do is create a climate of predictability when it comes to things like tax credits and research tax credits. So the alternative simplified research credit, the ASC, which is something that I believe in, making that permanent would really help you, yes? Ms. Spiegel?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, all of these, the R&D tax credit, the manufacturing investment tax credit, all of those things, if you know those things are permanent, it makes it much easier to, for me, for example, my objective is to grow our U.S. business. And for me to make the case back to the parent company in Germany to invest more money here, they want to know, okay, well, what's the advantage of investing there versus other places? And if it's on again, off again, it makes it a much more difficult story.
And let me then go one step further, because if I were to tell you we were to make a decision to increase that tax credit from 14% to, say, 20%, that would relate to more research being moved here and expanding jobs, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, and would you agree with that, obviously, Mr. Brewer?
Yeah, in fact, we rank like 27th or 30th in the world in terms of our R&D tax credit. It's embarrassingly low compared to almost everybody else. Canada, we could all move to Canada and double our R&D tax credit immediately.
Right. And so that's something I think is really important to talk about. Secondly, Dr. Schmidt, I really appreciate what you said about, again, workforce development. It's something that I've seen on the ground for 7 years as a mayor that we really have a problem with, especially when it comes to STEM education. We're falling behind, way behind the rest of the globe in our competitor nations in producing engineers. Even, in fact, unfortunately, we've sunk dramatically in just producing people with BAs, not to mention in STEM subjects. One of my colleagues, who I really have a lot of respect for, Rush Holt, is working on some things for the Defense Department, smart scholarships, that I think is a really creative idea. Dr. Schmidt, what are some of the things that you think we should be doing as a federal government to really, again, we are now in a global knowledge-based economy. The strong economies of the future are those that are going to be producing the most valuable natural resource we have, which is the genius of our people in science, technology, engineering, and math.
Thank you, Senator Booker. And actually, you mentioned in your earlier questions, talked about some of the challenges faced by small and medium enterprises. And I think, there are a number of things that we've learned and recommendations that are embedded in the Advanced Manufacturing Partnership Report, but also in the study that MIT did. But let me pick one that I think is really compelling, which is that when we studied this issue in the skills gap that you referenced earlier, one of the things that comes up is for a lot of firms, it's the people that are trained at the community college level. And I'll tell you this in the form of an anecdote. We had a really exciting event at MIT a couple of years ago, had 250 people come to campus, government leaders, industry representatives, small, medium, and large, and educational institutions. We had a CEO of a precision machining firm in Nashua, New Hampshire, that stood up and implored community colleges to train more workers in the kind of skills that he needed, because all of his employees had gray hair and he wasn't sure where the next generation was going to come from. No sooner had he made that statement than a president of a community college that was in the audience stood up and said, "I just had to cancel that class." This was stunning to me, but what you realize is that these are really specialized training, and furthermore, the community college system is optimized to shorten the commute time, because these people are doing things between day jobs and family responsibilities and other things, and that's a fundamental conflict. And the question is, how do you break that? And when we think about it and we look at some of the revolution that's occurring on our campus and other places and this use of online education, we think there's an opportunity there. So imagine a situation where these students can take what they need to learn in the book sense, learn it online, which we know can be extraordinarily effective, but then don't make them come to campus twice a week. Have them go on the weekend somewhere and get the necessary hands-on skills. And maybe it's not just at a community college, but maybe it's a local manufacturer that opens up its facilities for training purposes. So there's a lot of great ideas out there, and I think that's one of them.
Great. I'm sorry, Mr. Spiegel, do you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, we've had this problem as we've built new manufacturing facilities here. We built a new world-class gas turbine plant in Charlotte, 800 new jobs. We couldn't find the workers there, so we had to bring over professors from Germany. We worked with a local community college, Central Piedmont. We set up a program to train 500 or 600 people over a period of a year in what we call mechatronics, so they could work in one of these modern plants. And the second thing we did was we set up an apprentice program going forward because we needed a pipeline. We hire high school kids. They go to school part-time. They work in our plant part-time. We pay them to go to school. They get a 2-year college degree. They get a journeyman certificate, and they're guaranteed a job if they pass through the course. And but two things to understand about that. There's no debt. They're guaranteed a job, and the starting salary is $55,000 a year, which was more than the average for liberal arts graduates in the state of North Carolina.
Absolutely, but
So
may I ask this point in asking the chairman for just 2 seconds? That's the challenge I worry about, Dr. Schmidt. The average manufacturers are not your size. The average manufacturers in the United States employ 36 people. The average manufacturers in my state employ 14 people. And so the solutions you can bring about because of the scale of your company can't be brought about by these small manufacturers that are the average manufacturers in the United States. So if I can beg the committee's generosity, could you just address that for me? How do we solve that problem because of the small manufacturers that are really the bulk of manufacturing in the United States?
Senator Booker, so M7 Technologies has a tuition reimbursement plan for all employees in the company. And the way the program goes is anybody gets an A, they get 100% reimbursement. Anybody that's a B, they get 75% reimbursement. A C, 50% reimbursement. Anything below that, we don't reimburse. So this program is open to everyone, and we've had employees go all the way from associate's degrees. They're now studying their master's in industrial engineering. So that's just one way that small manufacturers can help this skill shortage.
That's great. Yes, sir.
Is it okay if I
Dr.
respond?
Brewer, please.
Oh, okay, thank you. You know, it's an interesting question, but I guess I disagree that small business cannot do something or play a role. We do. We bring in 50 to 60 summer interns every year from college and some from high school, from all over, not mostly, of course, Missouri, but outside also. We also do it to all of our offices around the world, so Hong Kong, Shanghai. We bring people in, and we give them jobs that are meaningful for the summer. They really have a problem that they have to solve. And so they come back for the summer. Some of them stay over, you know, during the year, work a few hours, particularly people that need to work to support their education. They come back again next summer, and by 2 to 3 years, we have people that are trained, and we have people that have the skill set, and we also know who are the best performers. They get tutoring and get involved in leadership and management training programs while they're there at the same time. So, you know, basically we grow our own, and it works really well.
That's great. The chairman almost pitched a perfect game, and I just messed it up by going overtime. Sorry, sir.
You did indeed, but a perfect game speaks for itself.